Hola.
Hi, Valentina. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us for the webinar today. We're very excited to dive into this big topic. So, we have a lot to discuss, and obviously, we only have about an hour or so. So, we will get started pretty quickly. So, thanks so much, Jorge, for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here and can't wait to start discussing everything. Before we kick off with the topic, just to welcome anyone whose first time it is at an Infijoy webinar. So just to give you a little bit of a background, Infijoy is a well-being platform, and we feature short courses all related to well-being, philosophy, psychology, mental health, and spirituality. So we met Jorge a few years ago, where we were lucky enough to work with him to film his Infijoy course about love and freedom, which is a very exciting course that dives into lots of topics related to love, attachment, spirituality, and sensuality, and everything related to those topics. We will share a bit more about that course towards the end of the webinar, as well as some promo codes if you would like to learn more about Jorge's work. So, without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce Jorge to everyone. For those who don't know him, I know that some of you are familiar with his work, but Jorge is a renowned psychologist and author of several amazing books. One of his focus areas is, of course, relationships, which is why we're lucky to have him here with us today to talk about the topic of navigating jealousy and attachment in love. So, welcome, Jorge. Thanks for joining us. I think you just on mute there, Jorge.
Yes, thank you very much, Tracy, for the introduction to this webinar, and also thank you everybody for being here. And it's nice to see some familiar faces. Not everybody is with their camera, but I see some people I know. So good to see you all, and new people or and people I know. Everybody is so welcome.
Great. Thanks so much, Jorge. And just before we get started with diving into the topic, could you please just give us like a quick background or introduction to the focus areas of your work for those that don't know?
Well, my work has been historically going into different directions. I started with a focus on transpersonal psychology, a psychology that is about the whole person, not only the mind, but also the heart and also states of consciousness connected to spirituality. It's an integration of spirituality and psychology, so to speak. But also I've been very interested in integral education, education for the whole person, not only for the mind. And in the last years, as many of you know, like my focus has been on the intimate relationships, sexuality, and also I work with individuals and couples in my counseling practices, like helping people to achieve more satisfying intimate relationships.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. So today we're talking about a very big topic, the topic of jealousy. So just so that everyone knows, towards the end of the webinar, we have allocated some time for everyone to get a chance to ask any questions that they may have. If you do have questions during the webinar, you can just pop them in the chat and then we will address them towards the end. So I think to get started, Jorge, could you just give us a bit more of an explanation about the roots of jealousy and where this actually derives from?
Mhm. Okay, yes, this is an important question because it's important to begin with to normalize jealousy, because some people when they feel jealous they immediately like go into a place of like a self-criticism and self-judgment, like feeling like wow, there must be something really wrong with me if I'm having these negative feelings. And jealousy runs very deep, you know. There is very evolutionary archaic roots to that. Probably like hundreds of thousands of years ago. And it sounds like evolutionarily like jealousy emerged in humankind as a way for men to make sure that their progeny, their sons and daughters were their own and not the neighbors, so to speak. So they were providing for their kids. And for women also even more or urgently or even more kind of dramatically, it was like an impulse to really make sure that your partner, the father of your kids, will not abandon her, and that in certain conditions in the past could lead to then her death, and not only her death and the death of her own progeny. So. So this is important to understand that these evolutionary roots, we all carry them, we all have them inside. And then the other level that we all carry inside is the more historical, cultural level. Um, for thousands of years, we live, and even before, we live in a world that's also very patriarchal. So there has been, in particular, like a lot of like justifications of jealousy and even violence, for women from men, not only because of they were like trying to be with someone else, but also like suspicions that they could be with someone else. So this is another level that affects more certain cultures than others, and this is also important. Maybe we'll discuss that later, And then the final level, and is the level that we can all do a lot of more direct work, is the biographical level, no? What are the conditions? What are the conditions in our childhood? What are the conditions in like our kind of like family environment when we're growing up? What are the conditions in an early childhood and early adolescence that may have led to us to have like these predispositions towards feeling more jealous? And the key thing here, and with this I will finish, is this question is that the more biographical wounding, the more biographical conditions leading to jealousy, then it's kind of almost, it opens a channel within our psyche to these more evolutionary and archaic impulses that we all carry inside. So in a way, we could say that like normal jealousy is a jealousy that we all carry inside from cultural and evolutionary factors. But biographical jealousy opens that kind of channel to wider to all those impulses that act like almost like as living fossils within us. And then it's when jealousy becomes like something overpowering, something that really possesses people and lead people to do things that later they might regret, like being like physically abusive with their partners and so forth. So I think those three levels are very important to normalize jealousy and to start understanding what are the deepest roots of jealous feelings in human beings.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because it's pretty obvious that jealousy has been around probably for centuries or as part of many human relationships and different dynamics. And there's often a lot of shame attached with jealousy or even taboo. And it's often something that people kind of avoid talking about. So I think today diving into this topic and instead of pushing it away or being shameful of it, trying to really analyze it and get more of an understanding of it is one of the first steps with dealing with it. So when it comes with jealousy, and often we talk about it mainly and for the purposes of this workshop, well, this webinar, in the sense in relation to romantic relationships, but of course it can also feature in other areas of life. But in the sense of the dynamics of a romantic relationship or partnership, how can jealousy actually impact the dynamics between partners?
Well, this is very important because so many people feel the thing that really protects the intimate relationships by controlling their partners, by like trying to restrict their contact with others. They think, they believe deeply sometimes that they are like protecting their intimate relationship, but that normally usually tends to backfire because it leads to behaviors of control, of interrogation, of invasions of privacy, or many things that like at some point like the partner that is the object of all this kind of like controlling behavior start feeling like asphyxiated, start feeling like this is not a relationship in which I want to be in. And it can also, of course, then lead to separations and to breakups. In other situations also that I have seen in my clinical practice, um, in which like there has been situations in which like a person who were being suspected of jealous of cheating like for uh, um, for no reason, like a person who was like deeply loyal in the relationship, but they were suspected and were interrogating all the time. And at some point, like this person, at some point is like, well, I'm being suspected anyway of doing these things. And then at some point they did it, because they were already guilty. So it can really like ultimately like corrode intimacy. It can corrode relationships, and of course, when it can lead to violence of abuse, it can obviously lead to breakups and separation. So definitively, there is like a normal dimension of jealousy in which like it could they say it's a sign of love, right? But for me, love, real pure love in the more kind of elevated way, is to want the happiness of your partner, even if that happiness means that your partner leaves you to be with someone else. Uh, that perhaps is like a kind of like very idealistic view of love that for many of us could be challenging. But that's kind of the purest sense of love. You love this person more than yourself. That's pure love, right? Otherwise, love is being confused with possession. This person is kind of mine, and therefore anything that does with others is completely incorrect.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for each person, jealousy might look like something different, or people might have a different understanding of what jealousy is and what jealousy isn't. So, in your explanation, how would you describe what jealousy is? And are there any misconceptions about jealousy?
Yeah, I mean, jealousy means basically like it's a feeling of being kind of afraid or have your kind of heart chakra contracted out of concern of your partner, the person you love, leaving you for someone else or choosing someone else instead of you, and then therefore leaving you kind of like abandoned, so to speak. And and we already mentioned some of the misconceptions, like that is a sign of love, for example, no? And another misconception connected to this is that jealousy it's a good thing. It's actually protecting relationships, when in many cases it ultimately kind of like backfires. And the other two main misconceptions is that jealousy somehow, especially in certain cultures, is understood that it justifies the control of your partner, and even beyond that, it could justify some kind of like even like physical restrictions or physical abuse if one suspects your partner of being with others. And finally, also the other misconception is that it cannot be changed. That if you're a jealous person, you're a jealous person forever. And maybe we can talk about this later, but there is not a magical wand that can transform a very jealous person into someone with no jealousy at all. And I already mentioned we all carry some kind of like evolutionary makeup towards some jealous feelings. But what it can be done is to be doing some work on that biographical level, so that jealousy can be more regulated, could be like more relaxed, could not lead to those kind of behaviors that are so destructive.
And when you're working with your clients, like I know that you work with some clients one-on-one or with couples together, how do you differentiate between when jealousy is warranted, I guess, if there's reason to be jealous, or if it's someone's insecurities or their own fears or from past experiences? How do you deal with scenarios like that?
Yes. Well, when I'm dealing with couples, I definitively like encourage very strongly like to have like to talk about it from a very vulnerable place. This is very important. Partner that may have an interest in some friend, or that he likes someone else, and it's very important, instead of like going there in an accusatory way, like or like, oh my God, you're like flirting with this person, I think you really like this person, like pause, do like big pause here and just connect with your vulnerability, and then speak with your partner from that vulnerable place. Hey, like, sweetheart, like, when you talk with this person, like, I feel insecure. I feel your energy is like more excited, and you laugh a lot. I feel you're even a bit nervous. Is there something else that I feel should be concerned about? So this kind of transparent communication coming from a place of vulnerability, it is very, very important. That's one of the main things. So, and then the other thing, like, about dealing with jealousy, like, um, the question is how to differentiate when it's from the past and the present, right? This is when it's important to do more individual work, okay? Individual work, and then have like some protocols, like, and we examine, like, in the biography of a person, like different levels, how was your family environment? Were your parents jealous of each other? Is it something that you grew up with, like, from the very beginning, And if that's were not the case, what were your relationship with your siblings, was your daughter, excuse me, your brother or your sister, the favorite ones? You were always kind of like invisible in your family environment. There is also like the syndrome of the middle sibling, like, it's not the older, it's not the youngest, it's the one in between that tends to be invisible. And also, what happened, like, in your early adolescence, do you have situations, repeated situations in which somehow you were not chosen, or even traumatic situations in which, for example, the person you were interested went with your best friend, or do you have like some traumatic experience of betrayal in that early adolescence and early adulthood? And then once we have like that historiography very clear, then we can look at adulthood. What's going on in your adulthood? What situations trigger jealousy? And then we can start, like, the person can start, like, seeing these resonances between those situations, and can start like having like some more like clear maps and tools to start separating the past from the present, because that's one of the key things that we always try to do in counseling and therapy, helping clients to separate the past from the present, because the present situation may not have really much to do with what happened in the past, but there could be like situational factors that kind of resonate, somehow trigger the trauma of the past, and then you can not afford to not see like the present situation through the lenses of that traumatic feeling.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think it always comes back to doing a lot of self-reflection and almost self-analysis and thinking about where could the root of these feelings be coming from, or is there anything else that is missing that's kind of indicating or showing these feelings or creating them to become a bit more. And I think what was interesting in the first part of your answer there also is how you shared about communicating with a partner in situations where you might be feeling a little bit jealous or insecure. And I think you often hear people saying that phrase of a little bit of jealousy is healthy. And I think that in this way, it actually means like it's not about ignoring those feelings. Like, say, for example, you're in a situation where you do notice a little bit of jealousy or insecurity, but instead of suppressing them or going to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, is actually communicating them and being quite transparent with possibly how your partner might be making you feel. So, in situations like that, what advice do you have for someone who might be feeling jealous or unsure or a bit insecure about a certain situation in their relationship dynamic? What is the
Mhm.
best way for them to kind of go about approaching this topic with their partner?
Yes, I think here there are many strategies that I use in my clinical practice and that are helpful. And of course, things to do like some counseling, individual counseling, like to do this kind of analysis and give the person this clear map or where the feelings tendencies important. But there are many things that can be done in the relationship. For example, let's say that that what makes me jealous or triggers my jealousy is when my partner goes out with her friends and I'm not invited because she also enjoys or he also enjoys to have like some time with her buddies or her friends. So in these situations, there are things that can be done. On the one hand, I can start like saying like, as I mentioned before, like, sweetie, this situation's triggering me like some kind of like a jealousy. Do you think it would be okay that you call me on the phone, while you are with your friends out there and we touch base, things like that. Or also another practice that helps too is like when this situation happens, I do something for myself that is nurturing. For example, I go and get a very nurturing massage with a practitioner that is helping me. And I am not at home just thinking by myself what my partner is doing or not doing. I do something that is nurturing with me, or I get together with also with my own friends. Another practice that helps a lot is like in this situation, especially when jealousy is more severe and the partner, for example, stays at home, it's like to have an agreement is like, okay, you go to do your thing with your friends, but when you come back home, maybe we can have like some time in which like you embrace me. We go to a sofa or to the bed or comfortable position, and then you embrace me and you give me some words of affirmation. Uh, I love you. You are the person I want to be with. And these words of affirmation after something like this help a lot as well. So these are some of the things that can be done in these situations.
Okay, great. And I think obviously when we talk about the topic of jealousy, a lot of the time people that are drawn to this topic are maybe people who are struggling with feelings of jealousy or how to navigate that. But then you get on the other side, perhaps there's in a relationship dynamic where the one partner is quite jealous and the other partner is trying to find ways of how they can support that partner or ways of how they can navigate that themselves. So, what advice would you have for the person, I guess, whose partner is jealous and showing jealousy towards them?
Well, this is a tricky situation because often the partner that is receiving the jealousy, like it really depends, no? If the jealousy is manifesting from a vulnerable place, it's going to be much easier for the partner to support the jealous person. If the jealousy is coming in the form of more toxic ways, like interrogations, like invasions of privacy, here it's important that the partner also puts some firm boundaries here and really helps and suggests your jealous partner to do like some psychological counseling or couples therapy. That's really important, especially, and this is something very important that I cannot emphasize enough. Uh, Physical abuse is never acceptable in these situations. And even psychological abuse of that kind of interrogation, of invasion of privacy, of control. There is many jealous partners that they would ask their partners not to go out with people from a different gender, things like that. And these things happen all the time. So it's very real. So in those situations, I think it's important. Yeah, the way to support your partner actually maybe to put those firm boundaries and support him to understanding that this is something that is causing him a lot of suffering and that we can kind of like heal the roots of that to be more relaxed. In situations that are softer, in which the jealous partner is vulnerable, understand that jealousy is a problem, understand they want to transform that jealousy, then is when these other practices can be done, no? Like affirmation practices, when the partner, when she goes to do something with friends and come back home, like get that unconditional embrace, all those practices I was mentioning before becomes much easier for the partner that has been the subject of jealousy to offer. It's much easier in those ways that when you are like being attacked or being like accused, very often unfoundedly about like being cheating or trying to cheat or making moves in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that you mentioned there, boundaries, is something that we hear about quite a lot nowadays, just in terms of like personal boundaries in the workplace or even in relationships. And what I find quite fascinating about the topic of boundaries is that they can be subjective depending on the person. So then it's very interesting to see how do boundaries work in a dynamic between two people where they might have a different understanding of what those boundaries might be. And this could be because they could be, each partner could be from a different culture or different experience, or maybe they just perceive the boundaries within a relationship slightly different to their partner. And this is
Exactly.
often what creates quite a bit of the conflict. What one person might think is fine, the other person in the relationship might not. So, how can partners go about, I guess, negotiating or discussing what their boundaries are within the relationship? I guess to kind of avoid scenarios where boundaries are being crossed.
Exactly. This is a very tricky situation that normally needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, exactly for the reasons you mentioned, like there could be cultural reasons, there could be biographical reasons. But the thing with boundaries is also tricky because certain boundaries could become very strong restrictions to the other person. Like, let's say that I'm a jealous person and I ask my friend, like, for me, it's an important boundary that you never, never, never have like a solo dinner with a person of a different gender. Well, that in certain cultures is more accepted, and but in other cultures, especially for most emancipated women in our culture and men, they would feel like a very restrictive boundaries that they should understandably like not accept because it's kind of like a it's like a constriction of their autonomy of the wholesome need and the wholesome right to have friendships of different genders. So this is tricky. Um, there could be other boundaries that could be perhaps more like more acceptable for most couples. For example, boundary like, well, yes, of course, you can have as many friends as you want and have some quality time, go to play tennis with your friends or having a dinner, you know. But I would appreciate if you don't go, let's say, for like 4 or 5 days holiday, you know, to Mexico with a friend of a different gender in which maybe there is like some connection, you know. So these are boundaries that I think that are more negotiable. And always in these situations when there is like people from different, whose boundaries are very different, sometimes we can find areas of compromise, you know, but in other situations, it becomes virtually impossible to find those areas of compromise. And then in those situations, then is when I also raise questions like, well, since there is an impasse in this situation, maybe you may be wondering. I ask like, is this a relationship that is sustainable for you? Your partner is saying that this desire of wanting to have solo dinners with people of different genders is unnegotiable for her in terms of her sense of dignity. Is this something that you can assume, you can support? If he says not, for example, I'm just saying here, I could say she as well, you know, then we could try to do some individualizations, you know, to see if there is ways we can work on the deepest feelings, the deepest concerns that arise for him or for her, you know, and relax those concerns. Sometimes we thought this other practice I was mentioning before, but there may be situations in which there is like an impasse, a complete impasse that is not resolvable. And in those situations, like I bring the questions. Well, is this a relationship that you can be in, and then a process maybe of like conscious separation could be offered. Also, there could be like also like a times in which like I call like some time like a like certain time like even like 3 or 6 months of time in which the person who is being constrained says, well, for 3 or 6 months, I will refrain myself because I really care about my partner. I really want to give him or give her a chance to work on her issues or insecurities. So for 3 months or 6 months, I will not have dinners with people of different genders. But this is with understanding that my partner is going to be working on these issues with an individual therapist, and he or she wants to transform them. And then after 3 or 6 months, we can see what happens. And then try again and see if things have changed or not. So there's these strategies that we can, but again, it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is obviously quite a difficult question to answer in a generalized way. But I think the key there, it sounds like it's very much about discussing it together, like with the partner. And I think that's where a lot of people maybe try to avoid doing that, is expressing maybe how they feel, because something you said, there's obviously often it's coming from a space of vulnerability. And when it comes to jealousy, there's often a lot of shame attached to it also. But obviously, with having those discussions and kind of figuring out those boundaries, it's kind of the first step. And I think often with relationships, it's not as if people go into the relationship at the beginning discussing what the boundaries are. They kind of reveal themselves over time and as different situations come up. So it's about figuring that out and kind of navigating that together. And I think something that I've seen happen in the past is you often get in a relationship, there might be one person who is almost pushing those boundaries or almost rebelling a bit in the relationship or trying to, I don't know, create a bit of friction in a way. What are your thoughts around that? And I guess linked on to the next question of whether jealousy can be an indication for other unmet needs in the relationship.
Mhm. Yes, clearly it can be. Clearly it can be. One of the things when there is also like jealousy in partners could be both ways. Although normally there is one person that is more jealous than the other for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that I normally do is like, okay, if you two are in this together, we need to do things first to strengthen your sexual quality, the sexual satisfaction in your life, and the emotional intimacy. This is foundational because this is one of these kind of unwritten laws of physics. The lower sexual satisfaction, the lower frequency of sexuality, the lower intimacy, the more jealousy is going to be emerging, because the jealous partner or the person who tends towards more jealousy will feel, well, this is not really working for my partner. It's probably looking for sexuality or intimacy somewhere else. So strengthening that foundation of like sexual satisfaction and emotional intimacy in a couple is foundational. It's like super important. But there was like a first part of your question, I think I'm missing right now. Um,
Yes, well, you kind of covered it, but basically, in a scenario where one of the partners might be almost deliberately pushing the
yeah,
boundaries or rebelling a bit in the relationship, but then you went on to answer around
yes,
whether it's an indication of unmet needs in other areas.
yes, yes. So in those situations, it's also interesting, like in these situations, what I do if I'm kind of working with clients in this situation, I would do an individual session with the person pushing boundaries uh, to really understand the motivation, because there could be like a whole spectrum of motivation from a place more wholesome motivation of greater connections in her life. Some men and women, they could feel very constrained, like with jealous partner, like the jealous partner, as mentioned before, they may have been kind of like constraining the numbers of friends they can have, the numbers of activities they can do without them. And this could be asphyxiating. There could be, it's not wholesome. So there could be like something like a need for, it's like my declaration of independence here. It's like, I really need to have friends. I need to do the things that are wholesome for me. So this is important. And of course, that could be on the other extreme. For example, you could have like someone who's pushing those boundaries to actually trigger the partner to maybe the partner is not feeling that the partner has as much investment on her or on him as they used to, and they are doing pseudo consciously things like more flirting when the partner is around to to elicit their interest, to let them know, like, hey, listen, I'm still an attractive man, I'm still an attractive woman, and I'm showing this to you in a social situation. uh, in these situations, the other person may feel jealous, and but I would say that in these situations, jealousy is tricky because in these situations, this clearly that something is off. I mean, I'm not a very jealous person for my own, developmental pathway and stuff. But I have been in a situation in which I was with a partner in a party, and I don't mind if they are kind of flirting with others or enjoying the company of others. I can't even celebrate it. But I noticed, for example, that she was talking with someone else very animated, but every 2 minutes she was looking at me. She was looking at me like to see if I had reactions around that. And that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. It's like, why is she doing that? Is she doing that to trigger something? Because I think she was maybe, because I have very low jealousy levels, she was trying to test them. So I had a conversation with her. It's like, sweetie, you don't need to do that. I noticed that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it possible that you were like over flirting because I noticed you looking at me all the time. Were you trying to get my reactions there? And we had like a very open conversation, kind of like really clear things up, and those situations didn't happen later. So there could be a variety of
Yeah.
scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. And something that you mentioned a bit earlier was around working on emotional intimacy. So obviously we hear a lot about like the physical intimacy and that side of things, but what do you mean by emotional intimacy and how partners can work to strengthen that?
Yes. I think one key thing I've learned about emotional intimacy is to learn what I don't know if you heard about Gary Chapman. Gary Chapman in the 1990s created what he is called the five languages of love. You probably are familiar with those. And that's very, very important. It has saved many marriages, has saved many relationships to understand that love for people to offer love means different things. They have different languages. For some people, it's to receive words of affirmation, to be told how beautiful you are and how much in love I'm with you on a daily basis. But for other people, they get love. They understand love when the partner creates situations to spend quality time. For other people, it's about physical intimacy, like physical contact. For other people, it's about receiving gifts, or remembering like anniversaries. I'm super bad with that. I've had like, for example, like some partners I had like getting we don't remember an anniversary of the first day that we kiss, a little extreme. But the thing is, like in this situation, it's super important that people really learn what's the language of love of my partner, and then they really make efforts to really like okay, that's not my language of love. My language of love is, for example, my language of love is through action, is through physical connection, is quality time. Okay, it's not about giving gifts, but if for my partner, for her to receive flowers every now and then, or a surprise gift every now and then is how she really feels that I love her. Why wouldn't I want to go the extra mile? Why don't I want to make the effort to every now and then give her that extra gift, right? So that's one thing that I think is very important, very foundational, and as I said, has saved many marriages and connections. And there are many other ways, of course, like to really create intentional space for physical intimacy that doesn't have to go to the sexual level. That's also very, very important because in our culture, like having also condition when you go into physical intimacy with your partner is something that has to go to sexual intercourse, a sexual connection. And that in a way it could go that way and could be beautiful, but to create a spaces in which of connection, of cuddling, of caressing, even of sensuality, with incense, with nice music, with just to really strengthen the emotional bond, without the sexual dimension. I think that can be really, really beautiful. And of course, like things like being playful, like transform challenges into games, things like that, or surprises. I encourage this practice to some of my clients too, like maybe every week one of you can like prepare an activity that you want to do, and then it's a surprise for your partner. And of course, the orientation for the partners to really feel curious, and to open themselves into enjoying in that activity, from and vice versa, things like that can really help the kind of like the emotional connection between two partners.
Great, thanks so much for those ideas, Jorge. So I'm going to start going through any of the questions that anyone else has. So we already have a few questions that have come through here. So if
Sure.
anyone has anything they would like to ask, you're welcome to ask directly with the audio, or you can put it in the chat box. I will start going through them. So the first question we have here is, how do you navigate situations like events with someone that a partner has said they find physically attractive and you aren't able to go, or you're not invited to go to the event?
Mhm. Very good. Okay. First of all, as I mentioned before, is to ask your partner. I understand that in this situation, the partner has told you that find that other person physically attractive, right? So that if that's clear and that's spoken about the way, that's a good thing between partners to naturalize attractions for others. That's very healthy versus like putting it under the rug and then the other person noticing the attractions. It is good, and it could be then like when you are walking in the streets and like it's good be to you, wow, this person is really beautiful, or this person is wow, that's very healthy to naturalize attractions. We are humans, we are alive, we are gonna feel attracted to other people. Okay. So let's say my partner has told me like she's going to this situation with someone she finds attractive. It's a social situation. I am understanding by the question. So in these situations, like I can just like ask my partner like if I'm feeling insecure about that. I can ask my partner like as I mentioned before, maybe when she comes back she can like not give me like full report. That's kind of an interrogation, but kind of give me some words of assurance or affirmation of our bond that things like yes, I like this person, but you are the one I love. You have that uniqueness in you that's why I'm with you, and I want to continue being with you, of course, Another thing that the person that is at home, so to speak, can do is to do this practice. Sometimes I recommend to my clients is coming from the book to these situations. It's a practice of kind of it's mudita, empathic joy, in which I start with myself. My partner is somewhere else with someone else, and then I stand with myself. May I be happy? May I be experimenting joy and well-being? Okay, first step. and I can repeat this several times. Second step, may my partner be happy. May my partner be experimenting joy and well-being in her life. Second step. Third step, may my partner be happy and joyful when she's also in her relationships with others, in their connections with others, you know. And I repeat that. And then the last step that is very important is like, may my partner's connections with others, they're a source of growth and evolution for me and my partner, and our relationship, even if it presents challenges for me. So this kind of like 4 steps, there's a practice that the person at home can do, you know, when the person is out there, you know. And it could sound paradoxical, but it practice over and over. It can really like open the heart and to a wider love, to a wider embrace of love here.
Great, thank you. And another question we have is, what role would you say projection plays in jealousy, thinking particularly of the anima or the animus onto the other person?
Okay, this person is bringing like Jungian language here, no? The animus, like is our counter sexual archetypal referent. You know, attraction, there's always some level of projection in most attractions, okay? We have all gone through that, right? We have gone through falling in love, infatuation, projecting all these qualities in the other person, and only with time we start withdrawing those projections, you know. So that's one consideration that's important. But it's also important to understand here that when I find someone attractive, when I find someone attractive, not just by looking at them, that's a more superficial attraction. We can find attracted people, you know, models or actors in Hollywood because they are like, you know, conventionally or socially understood as being very beautiful or whatever, you know. But when someone attractive or more energetically, not only physically but energetically, that's normally a sign that the energy of this person, the things that this person has developed in their life more, is kind of like it's resonating into our own vital world, and it's awakening some potentials in us that have not been fully developed, and therefore we feel drawn to that person that has developed those potentials, because by resonance and by feeling close to this person, we can start developing those potentials as well. This happens a lot, of course, when two people fall in love, you know. Very often people fall in love, they have sometimes this, a set of shared values, but very often they have a very polar realities, you know, like and polarities attract each other. That's kind of like you know, the social cliche, but there is something to it, you know, there's something deeper to it, you know. So in those cases, that doesn't mean that I have to go to bed with this person or to have sex with this person to fully, you know, awaken those potentials in me. But it could be that by contact with this person is kind of growthful for me. And if I have this understanding and I approach the relationship consciously, not just to enjoy the feeling, but also to own what is being awakened within me, and then developing it, that also can really help to withdraw that more projecting or more driven or more compulsive attraction to that person. Identified what it is. Let's say I'm attracted, I'm a man, my work's not going great, and I'm super attracted to this like female who is like highly accomplished in her work and is creating all these things, you know. So maybe contact with this person can be an inspiring force for me to really start like you know, creating projects in my life and feeling inspired to develop that part of myself that is undeveloped.
Great, thanks so much for that. The next question that we have is how to transform jealousy into compassion, particularly in the context of open relating.
Okay, that's another big question. And as I again, as I mentioned, there is no magical wand for that. My colleague and ex-student Marie Twine wrote a wonderful book, What is Comparison? So I refer this person to that book because it has like really great model evidence based on comparison and a great hints for that. I already mentioned that practice based on the Buddhist tradition. That's a practice that I use for that because empathic joy is comparison. Comparison is empathic joy in intimate relationships or romantic relationships. So that's one of the practices I use. But something important here also to consider is that Marie insists and also explained in my book, Love and Freedom, is that comparison and jealousy are not a zero-sum game. It's not that one you're feeling, but for those people who don't may not know what comparison is the opposite of jealousy, so to speak. It's the feelings of like instead of a contracted heart, my heart opens up and I can even feel kind of like joy and celebration and happiness when my partner is with other people that she loves and she's being appreciated too at different levels. Could be on an emotional level, social level, could even be on a sexual level in open relationships that are open to those possibilities, you know. So normally they are considered as being opposites, like if there is, but no, they could coexist, you know. uh, we can have like some things, you know, some jealous feelings, and also like you can develop like this like sense of like a more spacious heart that kind of like embrace those jealous feelings in a wider context of appreciation and joy. In terms of practices, I will refer to that practice I mentioned before, and I think in my books is described in greater detail. Um, and I will refer also to Marie's great is the best book on comparison. Marie Twine, What is Comparison?
Great. We will send an email tomorrow to everyone who's joined the webinar with all of the recommendations of the different books and some of the practical tools also that Jorge has mentioned, so that you do have that as a reference to refer to. And I know that also some of these activities, specifically that empathic joy one, are activities that you also covered in the Love and Freedom course. So there's a bunch of different activities like that included in the course, which we will share also in the email. So we have some more questions here. What's the best way to avoid jealousy aside from open communication and an open heart? Or do you think it's so deeply ingrained in human nature that it can't be
And be fully, you went mute.
fully avoided?
Yeah, I think I answered that before, like especially when biographical factors are kind of like strong, like either because of traumatic situations in childhood or repeated traumatic situations in early adolescence. I mean, those situations lead to what is called insecure forms of attachment, and normally like okay, fear of abandonment. So there's no magical one for that, but definitively like working with a counselor helps because um, especially like maintain working with a counselor who is there, is present, is kind of with no judgment, and it's unconditionally present for you, you know. can really help with time to start healing those traumatic experiences of my parents, for example, not being there when I needed them, you know. So there is something that it can really start compensating, and that kind of like kind of insecurities that are behind the anxious attachment or the fears of being abandoned. They are being uh, healed by realizing that, wow, I'm not being abandoned. This person is here, you know, for me. And of course, like strengthening your everyday life, those friendships, those connections of people who are there for you, you know, who are there for you, strengthen that network of support, you know, beyond your partner. Uh, so there is work that can be done. Again, there is no magical wand. There is levels of jealousy that we will probably all will always have because we come from hundreds of thousands of years and also patriarchal culture and so many conditions, cultural, historical, archaic. So, but we can do substantial level on this biographical level. We can heal a lot so that that jealousy, even though we feel it, is not overpowering. Okay, I'm feeling this jealous feeling. I can catch it now, and I can realize that it's very likely coming from my upbringing. I don't need to project it to my partner, and maybe I can share it with my partner from a different place of vulnerability. That's the path of healing.
Thank you for that. And we have one more question here. This time has gone so quickly. Um, and the question is, how do you deal with jealous women who are the partners of the friends of my partner during events?
Let's see. Let's make this clear. Jealous women who are the friends of
The
his.
partners of the friends of my partner.
I'm kind of having a little.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. The person who asked this question, Mupt, do you want to elaborate on the question?
Yeah, that will
We're a
help. I
bit
think that will be helpful to make
confused,
sure I address the question.
just so that we understand it correctly. Okay, nothing's coming through. If anyone
Okay.
else has any questions, please feel free to add to the chat box and we can finish off with one last question. Okay, yeah. So an elaboration of that question before. The girlfriend of my boyfriend's friend is jealous.
Okay.
How to deal with
The,
that? So I think so maybe it's in a way of how to deal with jealousy of someone who's not your partner.
mhm. Well, I would say like to so he's the girlfriend of his boyfriend friend. I would say like to share these tools, you know, that we're discussing here, to share these kind of orientations, to share these kind of these books, these tools that exist, you know, to with your friends, the people who are involved. Um, I think that's the more cautious approach. I wouldn't get involved directly unless you know you are being asked too, you know, because maybe they can tell you, well, that's not your business, it can backfire. But definitively you could share with your friends, you know, like those tools, like letting them know, like, listen, today there is tools, there is couples counselors, there is like books that can offer tools here that could really relax your situation and make your relationship more satisfying and not so constrained by this constant, you know, maybe frictions, tensions, fights, or perhaps even worse things that can happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. It's always tricky when people are getting you involved, maybe in their relationships, especially when it's around topics of jealousy, because I think as we've learned in this webinar, there's so much more to it than just what might be appearing on the surface. and there could be a lot more going on within that relationship. So often it can be helpful to maybe lend a listening ear or maybe ask a few questions or show support. But at the end of the day, as you've suggested, there are so many resources and tools available now, also in the form of books or courses or podcasts. So if that person would like to learn more about that, there obviously is a lot. I think, okay, we've gone 1 minute over, but if you don't mind just finishing off with one last question
It's
here.
totally fine.
Um, could you explain the psychology behind feeling good with my partner feeling jealous about me?
Okay. So, well, if the jealousy is unfounded, as I'm understanding from beneath this question, I think the psychology is like to have like really like, your own clarity, like your own clarity that this is not about you. This is super important because some people, when they get all this jealousy, they start also feeling like, well, am I doing something wrong here? What's happening? So if you are clear that your partner jealousy is unfounded, it's very important that you really root into that sense of clarity, and that sense of clarity actually is going to be very helpful for your partner, and very helpful for the situation that you are firm there. It's like, listen, I understand you have all these jealous feelings, and they could be challenging for me as you are suspecting me, or you're interrogating me again, depending of the degree of kind of like psychological pressure there. But definitively to really like have this sense of clear sense of like this is unfounded can provide you to greater sources to support your partner without feeling personally attacked. Because when people attack you about things that are not really about you, um, it's like, okay, it's not really about me. I don't need to take these things personally, and I can listen to my partner's concerns with empathy, with support, and then provide support. One thing also that I have recommended to some clients, and that when you have a partner that is kind of like more kind of interrogating you and like getting anxious about what you do or with who you're chatting, or having to talk about these smartphones, chatting on the I would recommend sometimes and more often to not get defensive, to not explain what's going on, but to go to cut to the emotional core. To maybe you can explain later that you were chatting with your aunt or with your uncle, okay? But before going there, if your partner is minimally receptive, embrace your partner. Like, give him a big hug and tell him, like, sweetie, I love you. I love you. I'm here for you. You are the one. Okay, and that immediately can relaxes the anxiety that is behind interrogation, behind the energy. And then later on, maybe you can tell, by the way, I was talking with my aunt, or
Yeah. I think that person was also asking around in a scenario where their partner is getting jealous, but
Mhm.
they're enjoying that their partner is getting jealous. What could that indicate about that behavior? So it
Oh, I
kind
see.
it kind of
Oh,
links
got it,
back,
got it.
yeah, it kind of links back to what we were talking about earlier, where sometimes um some scenarios in a relationship dynamic, the one person almost enjoys making the other person jealous.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts, but in my mind, I think there's an element that probably ties back to the evolutionary roots of jealousy in a way.
Well, I mean, I would say that in this scenario, I mean, there is a level of this that in certain moments in a relationship can bring an even healthy spice to it. We shouldn't always demonize jealousy as something super bad in all cases. There could be a point in a relationship in which, wow, having my partner a little jealous in a situation when I'm with someone, it makes me feel like, wow, my partner is really into me. He's really interested, maybe in the first stage of a relationship, like he really is into me, he's interested. And that can be okay. That can be valuable, that information, Okay. It's different when I'm kind of like enjoying making my partner jealous because I have like we talk about this, some unmet needs, okay? Uh, or I'm feeling insecure about my sexual appeal, and by doing this, I'm going to feel better. These are more on the more leaning towards the more neurotic areas that could be good to talk more openly with your partner or deal with a counselor. But in certain situations at the beginning of relationships, like to have your partner like a little when you are like with other attractive people, it can bring a spice to the relationship. It can also lead to great sex afterwards. So let's not fully demonize jealousy in all situations.
Great. Thanks so much, Jorge. And thank you to everyone who joined. I feel like we could talk about this topic for hours, but we have
Yes.
already gone over by 10 minutes. So thank you for answering all of the questions and for diving into these topics. As mentioned earlier, we will send an email tomorrow to everyone with a list of some other recommendations of books and podcasts, as well as more information about Jorge's course, Love and Freedom, which dives deeper into topics of jealousy and other topics all related to relationships. So we will also send you a discount code for that course if you would like to join. If you have any other questions, I know we didn't get to all of the questions that everyone added. Please let us know and we will try to address them as much as possible. We also have a blog and we will be creating some breakaway articles about these topics from the webinar that we will share also. So hopefully to answer any other extra questions that anyone has. And we will, of course, share Jorge's details in the email if anyone would like to connect with him personally after the webinar.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you very much everybody who has been here. And I hope this has been somehow of value for all of you. And all the best with your relationships, all the best with your own jealousy and the jealousy of your partners or other people around. And let's bring always like a very compassionate gaze to, especially to our own feelings of jealousy and your partners as much as possible at the same time as firmness about any kind of like psychological or even physical abuse that's not acceptable. So compassion and firmness, I think, are the two words I would like to leave you with here.
Thank you so much, Jorge. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.